วนาในหัวข้อที่ชื่อว่า Human Rights นะคะ Diligence and Modern Slavery Risk Management ซึ่งเราได้รับเกียรติอย่างสูงเลยนะคะจากวิทยากรผู้ทรงคุณวุฒิซึ่งเป็นผู้บริหารระดับสูงขององค์กรธุรกิจชั้นนำของประเทศไทยค่ะแต่ละท่านจะมาแชร์มุมมองนะคะแล้วก็ประสบการณ์ในการบริหารธุรกิจในหลากหลายอุตสาหกรรมเลยนะคะดิฉันขออนุญาตแนะนำท่านผู้บริหารทั้ง3ท่านที่จะเข้าร่วมเสวนาในช่วงนี้นะคะคุณธีรพงษ์จันทร์สิริท่านประธานเจ้าหน้าที่บริหารบริษัทไทยยูเนี่ยนกรุ๊ปจำกัดมหาชนค่ะท่านถัดมานะคะดร.สวัสดีค่ะท่านถัดมานะคะดร.เนติธรประดิษฐ์สารนะคะผู้ช่วยบริหารประธานคณะผู้บริหารและรองกรรมการ
VP of the Executive Assistant to Group CEO and Senior Vice President, Global Partnership of Sustainability and Communications of Jaran Pokapan Group Company Limited. And the third on the panel is Dr. Prong Tharawanit, Head of AAS Academy Advanced Info Service Public Company Limited. So, good afternoon to all speakers. Thank you for joining us. Today, I am very pleased and honored to be moderating this session. So, I would like to go first to the first question relating to the business conduct and human rights issue. How important is the human rights issue to your business? So I would like to start with Mr. Thirapong from Thai Union Group. As CEO of TU, how do you perceive this particular topic? So thank you very much. For Thai Union, we perceive our business from the view of sustainability and human rights. We have the Sea Change policy guidance, which is part of the mission, and also it is the core value of our operation as well. Our vision is that we want to be the leader and most trustworthy seafood manufacturer. We want to take care of our employees and also the natural resources. We want to make sure that everything is sustainable. We want to make sure that our staff, our teams, prioritize the sustainability policies relentlessly and seriously as well. Our stakeholders, our customers, the NGOs will perceive that the seafood businesses has very high risk, especially in terms of human rights violation, and also the modern slavery issue as well, especially the seafood manufacturing or seafood industry of Thailand also do not have a very good image, and it makes us that makes us have to try harder in order to ensure that we can change that. And 5 years ago, we have come to realize the importance of upholding this principle of human rights conservation and respect, and also that came at the same period with the TIP report from the US as well. And we are in the third tier, and many countries are coming up with legislations that are more stringent in terms of the labor rights and human rights, and that can also affect our exportation and importation. For example, the US have now started to enforce the laws to ban the products produced by modern slavery or forced labor, and the EU itself is considering the enforcement of mandatory human rights due diligence. So we can see the importance of our adjustment and also how it can affect our business operation. So thank you very much, Dr. Thirapong. Mr. Thirapong. So TU has provided that this is the core value of the business operation. So moving next to Dr. Netiton from CPF, what is your perception of this particular issue? So thank you very much. You can hear me clearly, I believe. So first of all, I would like to just give you certain backgrounds in terms of, because due to the complexity of the business of Jaran Pokapan. So we have both listed companies and not listed companies. In our group of companies, we have so many businesses which can be divided into 14 groups, being agro, food, communications, and we have retail and wholesale businesses. We have pharmaceuticals, we have construction, and commodities. We have operations based in 21 countries. We have about 400,000 employees worldwide. So I think that now that you can have a rough picture as to the scope and the scale of our business and how it is related or involved with the people. And the people themselves are basically the core of our consideration on human rights aspect, whether it is in the supply chain with our customers, our traders, our vendors, suppliers, and also the members of the communities that our businesses are situated. So the topic of recognizing human rights is basically the core of our business conduct, inevitably. And social, or S, the S in the ESG framework, is being pushed forward by our company as well. And this is something that we recognize that it is very hard to track, very hard to monitor, because it affects human in all aspects. So our group of companies, we have to prioritize the social aspect and also prioritize the monitoring of our business conduct to see if there is any impact on the society, because we can see, according, and also as mentioned by Mr. Tirapong, that we can see that the trends, the global trends, the perception of the new generations who are going to join us in our group of companies, they are concerned, they are more and more conscious about human rights. And with the complexity of our group of operations, we are also facing risk in the complexity as well, because we need to also consider the enterprise risk management. We have to measure the risk relating to the people, and also the risks of and that risk in relation to our company as well. We have to consider external and internal risks. We have to make sure that this will not affect the people in our operations and also in our value chains. And the modern slavery is another topic that we have to be really conscious and careful, because, the global communities, other countries, they are putting us under the telescope. They are basically scrutinizing our business operation, not only in our business, but throughout the value chains and supply chains. Thank you very much. So that was Dr. Netiton. So I would like to hear from the representative from the telecom business, like Advanced Info Service. Dr. Prong, what is your perception on human rights and business?
So thank you, SET, for giving the opportunity for AIS to be here and chairing the panel with esteemed speakers. Human rights is actually a very sensitive issue, and it's actually linked to everything, the whole 9 yards, and it could create, unforeseeable impact. AIS, we are in telecommunication business. We provide digital service. You may think we don't have this issue, right? Because we are not labor-intensive enterprise. But if we talk about people, there's effect from throughout the supply chain, whether our employees, customers, or how our clients are using our products, suppliers. So I think there is actually a significant risk to our business, but for AIS, we see the risk as an opportunity for us to be able to expand and build good ecosystem. And I think the three of us will be able to discuss a lot of interesting points on this panel. So thank you. I think this is only the first question after hearing the views from human rights. So there's a lot of insights to this, and other people may not be aware of. So let's now move on to the next question. I want to ask something about a more constructive question. So how do you formulate strategies or business and policies pertaining this human rights issue? Let's hear from Kun Tirapong. First, as executives, so your role as the CEO at the Thai Union Group, what are your views on this modern slavery and the policies that you have? Thank you very much. So Thai Union is in the seafood business. So it's a labor-intensive business, particularly the migrant workers. So for sustainability and human rights is actually one of our main concerns. Thai Union, we have global directors of sustainability who oversees all of this issue. Moreover, this director reports directly to me, the CEO. Also, our company, we have human rights managers to oversee this issue. So human rights and labor rights, and also the modern slavery, all of this has been incorporated in our sea change strategy. So we have safe employment, which focuses to give opportunity for all the workers to be treated by the international standards without any discrimination along all of our supply chain. So policy formulation is clearly, we use the top-down used in all over our group. For example, human rights policies or business ethics or labor practice or labor code of conduct applied to all our trade partners. And also there's also a lot of regulations, also the fishing vessels as well as the farms that supply to us. So, and also we work closely with NGO and the public sector. So thank you, Khun Tirapong. So safe employment. So it is important that workers are being treated in a non-discriminatory manner. So after hearing from Dr. Netithorn, so you can see the variety of business under the CP group or Jalan Prokapan group. How do you formulate your policies and the overarching policies? What are your organization structures and for the whole group to work forward?
So thank you very much. Let's take a step back just a little. In terms of the human rights, as I have mentioned, that it is a very complex matter. It may be a little bit difficult to understand. And people may not understand really in terms of what are the relevance or the relation or how human rights are involved in our business. So basically, human rights is the risk and also opportunities, and I would like to thank the SET for having us, for providing us with the opportunity to come today and in the launch of the modern slavery guidance. So this talk will basically provide us with the perception that we can actually drive forward this matter systematically. For CPF, we are working on the 5 criteria or 5 scopes. And similarly, firstly, is the role, tone from the top, the role of the executives, directors who have the ability and decision-making power to set out policies. So in order to raise awareness for this higher-ups or those at the top of the corporation, so that they can come up with policies that are human rights, that consider human rights. So basically, we have available the CEO guide and translate the CEO guide from, which is in alignment with the, so basically this particular guide will set out like the relationship or the involvement of human rights in businesses. And secondly, we try to come up with the strategies and policies, and this will be applicable throughout the 21 countries that we have the operation base. And this will be in alignment with the sustainability strategies, and it requires each of the group companies to come up with the human rights due diligence every 3 years. Some of the countries in which we have operation base are now has already adopted this particular task, but we try to make it a mandatory work for all of the 21 countries. So in terms of forced labor and risk of modern slavery, we also set out the policies relating to international labors as well, and we set up a committee in order to oversee the fair and decent recruitment as well, and we're joined by the experts in this field as well. And this is the way that we try to do it systematically. We try to make recruitment systematic, try to reduce the risk of exploitation and eliminate the risk of forced labor. Another 3 parts. The first one is that we came up with a responsible agency. Myself, I have the opportunity to set up a team on human rights relating to our group companies, and we also have the people steering committee, which works hand in hand with the sustainability committee of our group as well, and that will be they will be working on the recruitment, and the last one is a reporting duty. The group has already launched our human rights report on the 10th of December based on the UN Guiding Principles or UNGP. And we will have to leave it with the SEC to publicize or to publish this particular guideline for us. In terms of the collaboration or the founding member of Global Compact Thailand, or as a role for us as part of the Seafood Task Force, we try to enable the collaboration among the civil sectors as well. So these are the 5 aspects of our work. Thank you very much, Dr. Netiton from CP Group. So let's hear from AAS perspective. So Dr. Prong has already mentioned that, as a telecommunication service provider, it may be difficult for us to really, how is that related to labor or modern slavery, because you may not be really involved with the people. So from the perspective of as telecommunications service provider, what is your perspective in terms of collaboration with the internal and external personnel? So first of all, I would like to just say that tone from the top is a must, is very important. I do agree with the first 2 speakers. In order for us to take care of all of our stakeholders, we have to make sure that our operation is in alignment with the UNCHR or ILO. But in terms of the management structure, in AAS, we also set up the development committee who will be overseeing these aspects of labor and labor rights. And also we have the business and ethics committee as well. And this particular committee came from a number of agencies, because throughout the supply chains that are involved in our business, whether it is the HR, procurement, sales, engineering, they're all involved in the business, and the representatives from these departments are involved in the policy, in the committee, and they have the role of setting up and determining the policies that we will issue, and that will be encompassing the suppliers, the joint ventures companies that we are working with, and all of us, we have our roles and responsibilities, and we also have to follow the monitoring and inspection process as well. But this inspection process is not saying that you pass the exam or you fail the exam, but the inspection process aims to create the awareness, to raise the awareness, because the best way to solve the problem is to prevent the problem from happening. And we score about 99.9% every year. We also have the grievances system as well. The second point that I would like to just mention is that in terms of the strategies, we have the policies available, but what are the strategies that we can ensure that it can be implemented, policies can be implemented? Because otherwise it would just be up there, uploaded on the internet, but not really put to use. So in terms of human rights for AAS, we try to come up with the definition, as as Dr. Netiton mentioned, that it is very hard to understand. So how can we simplify that for everyone and not bore them to death? So first of all, we have to really incorporate that into our corporate structure and corporate culture. And we have 14,000 employees, and 80% of them are the new generation or the younger persons. And if we just want to get their attention, we have to pitch it in 3 words, basically. So pitch, listen, and plan. So we need to give them the food for thought and fun and fit means the food for thought. Fun is the fun in working, and fair is the fair working condition, equal opportunities or equalities in the society. Fair means that every employee in our organization has to have equal rights, and also we have to encourage the diversity and respect, because we are in the technology business. Diversity will bring about innovation, and innovation will push forward our organization. And no matter who you are, if you perform, if you can work greatly, then you will have a chance to grow in our company. But in terms of the execution, we seriously consider about how can we blend that into our corporate culture. And after this, there will be no need for us to really, have to go to the textbook, try to look up the definition, but it will be embedded in our DNA. So thank you very much, all the three speakers, for this second question. So I think that now the participants may have gained a wider picture, a more comprehensive picture as to what is the human rights and businesses. So Dr. Prong mentioned one sentence that I think is very interesting, and I think that we are quite related to that. So how can we make this very complex matter more simple? So this will bring us to the third question, because all three of you are from different businesses. What are the challenges? Of course, the challenges will be different as well. So for this third question, can you share with us your experience and your solution that you use to address all the challenges that you face for the participants? Starting from Mr. Tirapong, from your perspective, from the agro and food businesses, what are the challenges and how did you address such challenge?
So the challenges and risk, particularly in modern slavery, it is really depending on the categories of the business as well as the supply chain. The companies, I think they should conduct continuous and periodic human rights risk assessment. So Thai Union, we do this annually. So the challenges that we have identified, I'd like to give you some example. So the risk in actually being coerced with the fees, and they have to pay for these migrant workers. So this is why we had to formulate clear policy by having the ethical migrant recruitment policy since 2016 in order to regulate the fee and being transparent with the fee, and also reducing the risk of modern slavery and debt bondage. Next year onward, in January, Thai Union will be responsible for all the recruitment fees for migrant workers based on the employer pay principle. So this is not just for agro and food business, but I think this will work for other labor-intensive industry as well. The second challenge is the human rights violation, labor rights violation on fishing boats. So since, they go out at sea, we monitor the work closely, and also we have issued vessels code of conduct, which is actually imposed on our suppliers or fishing boats, and we also send in auditors randomly on boats and also other foreign boats. So we have actually inspected 143 tuna vessels, and we have also interviewed these workers, 850 of them. Moreover, we work closely with the NGO to have transparency, and we also, exploit technology by attaching videos, GPS, or sensors for us to be able to monitor the treatment to these workers, and we can actually trace back in case there's any violations. And we know where the vessels are, and they are operating legally. So this is briefly what we do from Thai Union. So let's now maybe hear from telecommunications and technology from AIS, Dr. Prong, please. So thank you. So we do risk assessment annually as well. So the challenges that we have identified is basic labor rights, whether it's in terms of safety. So our customers, we also consider data protection and privacy. And within our supply chain, our vendors, SIM card producers or tower erectors, contractors, and we will actually see if there has been grievances and complaints. Maybe I want to take you on how we address this issue. There are 3 pillars, right? Protect. So the public sector, I think the business can actually look at the respect and remedy in the 3 pillars. So for human rights violation, we try to understand that it's a basic and fundamental rights. In our perspective, it is our business. We have to go back to what we do. Our business is technology and telecommunications. The main objective of human rights is actually to ultimately reach sustainable development, right? There are 17 of them, 17 goals. One of the goals that is actually to reduce inequality. So as a service provider in telecommunications, like basic infrastructure, like roads, so we need to reduce inequality and provide access. So the question is, if that road, but there is no people living there, there is no development there, will that give equality? So we want to see, the benefits of having that, providing that infrastructure. So we wanted to develop health and medical service. So rights to being to access to healthcare, I think Thailand is unequal on this aspect, in the provinces or in big cities. Yes, the Ministry of Public Health is responsible for this, but we do have our network to work with all these health centers that are all over the country. So we work with health volunteers and actually develop an application for these people living in rural areas to access medical consultation and medical care. So 200,000 people are using this application. We also are concerned about access to education. So with internet, but if there's no knowledge there to disseminate, is that going to benefit? So we work with the Ministry of Education to offer, knowledge on content in marginalized schools. AIS, we have our own library. What's the relevance of that? So our library exists on the digital platform. We work with the MSDHS, Ministry of Human Security and Social Development, to be able to offer these libraries and access to these libraries. And we work closely with MSDHS again to provide children with tutoring so they can actually take entrance examination. So we have online tutoring service. So aside from, what we do on our regular business as usual, we wanted to see what else we can do. Maybe you have heard about cyber bullying, because social media is actually a platform. Maybe you've heard of depression and suicide. So we were thinking of how we can help tackle these problems. So we don't have the issue of modern slavery. So we wanted to work closely with our users to be able to use the platform safely without having to go through bullying, and having empathy. with all our users. And if we continue to do this on a day-to-day basis, I think it's actually will pave a great way to prevent human rights violation. Since we are, telecommunications company is not very labor intensive, but I think it's important for us to do our part and be responsible. So I think it's a perspective from Kun Tirapong. You've seen the example on how you address the challenges. In AIS, you can see how they're doing in terms of the prevention efforts and to be able to achieve that human rights respect. Let's now hear from CP Group. Maybe you can give an example from the CP Group, from CP All, CPF, or True. How do you approach this? Is it different from your other businesses?
So thank you. First of all, of course, the challenges of each of these group of businesses are different and unique. They have their own different characteristics. But since I'm from the central area of the company's group, so I would like to just divide that into two parts. The first one is the structural part. There is a structural challenge. And the challenges that we face from the very first day is communication. So that goes back to the same topic that I have mentioned, that what are human rights that are related to each of the part of the business in our group, and who has the ability to actually point out, identify as to what aspects of human rights are related to their business. For example, for retail business, how can we make sure that retail business can actually understand the human rights aspect related to their business, which will be different from food agro and food different from telecommunications. So, but before getting to that, we need to make sure that they understand the scope of human rights that are directly relating to their business operation. And at the same time, they will have to be able to digest those principles for their colleagues. And sometimes when I talk to, human rights experts and whatnot, I still do not get really clear answers anyway. For example, the shift that may take 12 hours, if the worker is willing to take the shift, willing to work 2 shifts equaling to 24 hours, if they do that voluntarily and willingly, is that a human rights violation? Well, there is still some unclear approach on this, because we do not think that we are violating anyone's rights, because it has been taken the decision has been made willingly. But what we are missing is that we still have to look at the consequences, because by working 24 hours, is that posing any risks towards our customers or other parts of the business or the person working in the same location? So it is not only the risks imposed on that security guard who is working 24 hours, but we have to really digest the concept of human rights and make sure that each group in our business can really understand how that is applicable to them. And also another issue is communication, on the communication as well. For example, if we have to ensure that human rights will have to be applied in the business, how can we need guidelines, we need manuals, we need trainings. We need to ensure that each and every people in the business can really apply human rights principles in their day-to-day work. And within that, even though it is still the topic of communication, we still need tools to basically pass on the knowledge, to educate them. The second part is having the policy. How can we make sure the policy really responds to the issues of human rights comprehensively? We have to come up with the policies. We have to ensure that the policies cover human rights and labor, and we need sub-policy or the secondary policy that will basically cover other aspects, for example, migrant workers, international workers, diversity, equality, or code of conduct for our suppliers. So these are the secondary policies that we have, that we need, really like the central or the bigger policy that will basically be referred to when we are making this secondary policy guidelines. So this is within the structural challenges. But going back to the question and to the topic, for example, in agro and food business, this is similar to Thai Union in terms of when we hire migrant workers, this is the risks that we have to take and we have to manage. And we are using ethical recruitment or employers pay principle as well. And what we did that we think that can be shared in this panel is that we went straight to the agency who recruited the labor or the migrant workers in the origin country, and we provided training to them to ensure that they can really recognize forced labor and provide them with the incentives by saying that if they can be part of the training, they will be part of our group of companies. They will be the responsible suppliers within the pool of CP responsible suppliers. We cannot guarantee whether they can be our suppliers, but at least they will be within the group of responsible suppliers. And this is something that I can say that we have to be engaged. We have to be engaged from the ground up. We really need to go local. And this is something that I would like to share, and also to point out the importance of communication, of really identifying the problem and trying to adjust how to make human rights, which is very confusing, very complex, to something very digestible and understandable. Thank you very much, all three speakers. We have come to probably about the middle of the panel discussion, and I think that some of the participants now have a clearer picture based on your experience that you shared. But in terms of human rights work, of course, you have to invest in making sure that your human rights advocacy are working. So can you share with us the outcome of the work, whether the quantitative or qualitative outcome? What are these outcomes? So starting from AAS. So thank you very much. As I have mentioned and shared earlier about the preventive measures, so in terms of outcome, the outcome also affects our business and also the society as well. In terms of the internal outcome, if the business have no human rights violation, it is well managed, the organization, of course, will be better, will be improved. It will increase our competitive edge. It will enhance our branding, our image, perceived by the public. Also, for the new generations, as I have said, that they put some weight on a lot of weight on this human rights management and human rights violations. So this is something that can really enhance our image and also the image towards the investors in the market as well, and it can really attract new blood to join us in the organization. So this is something that the organization benefits. But going back to the benefit to the society will have the stronger ability and stronger access to the technology that we provide. They will have better rights, will have more rights to really get their hands on or have access to the technology. We can basically provide them with the technological access, and that can lead to CCIA or innovation that they will benefit from if they have access to technology. So this is basically creating the ecosystem for the business. So basically, this is all, the benefit is direct and indirect. If the business can survive, then the society will survive. It is a reciprocal business benefit approach.
ขอบคุณดร.ปรงจาก AS นะคะมาฟังผลลัพธ์ที่ทาง CP Group ได้บ้างเรียนเชิญดร.เนติธรค่ะ
So now let's hear from Dr. Netiton. So maybe I'll add a little on the risk management. I think it's like a lens when with another lens, like buying insurance, human rights management. It's sort of like a risk management in terms of operations. So we are concerned about human rights is we want to manage risk and preventing that impact on people who are within our operation, both internal, external, trade partners, and all people in our value chain, not just the supply chain. So this will actually enable, everyone to pull through together. So if we can actually manage human rights, raising awareness, equipping them with fundamental knowledge on respect to human rights and conducting business at the level of our trade partners in our supply chain and value chain, I think it will enable, that ripple effect to the level that it's going to affect, everyone to our trade partners. This is very important because at the very least, we have to excel internally first and move on externally. So what happened a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years, when we had that yellow card from Europe? We shouldn't, cut ties with our trade partners. What we need to do is to work with them, to be able to go through this transition, for them to be our responsible and ethical trade partners. So it's a great lesson for us that in order to work on human rights, we have to work in collaboration with all the stakeholders because of the complexity of the value chain. Because you could have that small weak link, a very small link in your value chain that. And second thing is that what we learn is equipping our trade partners and people in value chain and providing that incentives. So, the current business, it's so difficult to try to influence people to, recognize the significance of human rights unless they truly understand the value of caring about this issue. That incentive that if they respect human rights, they'll become our trade partners in the future, and they'll be listed in our list of responsible suppliers, for example. And we need to proactively train them, educate them, and guide them, mentor them to be, that responsible supplier. And the last thing is, it's about seeing the global trend that, the various ranking that exist, and the credit and loan, the social issue, how is that criteria being considered, like DGSI, etc. All of this is actually the benefit of actually, strengthening internally and expanding externally. So thank you, Dr. Netithorn, for elaborating on the results that the CP Group has gained. Let's hear from the last experts from Thai Union Group. For us, human rights and sustainability, it is not something that we need to ask whether we should do it. It is already something on what are we going to do about it. It's not an option for us anymore, but it's like a license to can operate these days. Our trade partners globally, set this as a priority. So there are two folds of this benefit. So the business benefit is that, so when Thailand encountered a problem about 6 or 7 years ago, so we, overcame the crisis. And today, now, Thailand, we are actually leading on sustainability and human rights. So our company, we are committed as a leader as well. we are recognized by DJSI, and we have been a member since 8 years ago. And 2018 and 2019, we were ranked, in food group category as #1 in this category. And in 2020 and 21, we ranked second. So we rank, highest in the 100% percentile in human rights. So all of this really created such great confidence in our business. Our trade partners truly trust us, and they are sure that all our products are safe and produced with respect to human rights. The social benefits for this is, for in taking up this human rights issue, I think for Thailand, we have the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, and Thailand is actually the first country in Asia to formulate this plan. And Thai union taking part in this, being on board in this. So we are part of actually growing. We are a big part in the Thai economy. And sometimes, we take this leadership, and I think other companies can actually see us as a great example. And it's actually an issue that is near and dear to all of us now.
แต่นี่คือเวลาที่ต้องพูดคุยกันว่าเราจะดูแลบริหารจัดการแล้วก็ดำเนินการในเรื่องนี้อย่างไรนะคะเราเข้าสู่ช่วงโค้งสุดท้าย
So I think we are moving to the last part of our panel discussion. So we are now in the last question. It's a key lesson learned. That will be. So I want to hear from you the key lessons learned and the tips that you may want to communicate to our audience today.
Thank you very much. So I would like to leave 3 to 4 topics. The first, for CPF, I think if we have the determination from the top, or in this case of CP, it's Mr. Subhashit Jarawanon, the CEO of CP Group. That is a very good starting point. And if we have the tone from the top, it will come down, branch out to other sectors, other employees, other departments. It will be translated into the strategies, policies that will be applicable throughout the businesses. If we don't have the tone from the top, we may be able to do it, but it will not be in full stream. Or as provided by Mr. Tirapong, who is here by himself personally, this is a very good sign that you can communicate within your organization that you are taking this seriously from the management level. Another thing is that we have to ensure that the person how can we make sure that the people at the top really recognize the importance of doing this? How can we communicate not only with the employees, but how can we communicate with the CFOs, with the CEOs, with those chief executives of your company, really understand why do they need to do this? Why do the company needs to take this approach? Why is this a license to operate? And I also think that setting the goal and clear direction, and also producing the report of human rights report, for example, the human rights report that we made last year, we can identify gaps and opportunities, what we need to do more, what we are doing good at the moment. Also, other organizations that are also working in this. I think it is a collaborative and collective effort. We really need to build the environment and ecosystem that will enable everybody in the organization to understand what we are doing. We can see that there are manuals, there are guidelines, there are practices, so many of them, so many to the point that we do not really know which one we are referring to or which one we are following. So we really need to try to ensure that everybody can have access and really understand what they need to do. Not only, and it is the responsibility of all of us. It's not the responsibility of only the business sector, private sector, civil sector, or companies or the set, but we really need to make sure that everybody in the organization really understand. So in terms of the government, I would say that we have to think whether it is impossible to use the ICT to really help the management to facilitate the renewal of 90 days renewal for migrant workers. This is basically the responsibility of the government and also of all of us as well. We need to really drive this forward. And lastly, I would like to just say that we are going to have the National Dialogue on Business and Human Rights on human rights due diligence this Friday as well. And it will be held by the GCNT and also the Ministry of Justice. So if you're interested, please look up the website of the GCNT. And lastly, it is our responsibility. It is our shared responsibility. And we really need to create this fair competition atmosphere because it will be no use for us if one company only respects human rights. We have to really create this race to respect human rights. So we need to create this level playing field in every country, in every region, in everywhere we have our business in. This is something that we really need to prioritize. So thank you very much. That was Dr. Nepiton from CP Group. I would like to move on next to Dr. Prong from AAS. So in terms of key lesson learned, it is a very good opportunity for me to hear from the other two speakers, and I really agree with all of you. Well, I think we do not need to ask questions about what is human rights. We need to scale up what we already know. We need to really scale up the principles that we have. We need to be creative. We have to improve our organizations. If we can embed that into our DNA, we can scale it up to the organizational level and along the value chains as well. If we really take this seriously, we know that it is a gray area, but we can simplify that as well. We need to really try to basically communicate this with all of the people that we're working with. You may be wondering as to what is the starting point. So we need to start with ourselves. We need to start within our organization. So in the organization, we have controllable factors that we can manage. But in terms of the external counterparts, it may be a little bit difficult, but we can see that a number of sectors are trying to come up with preventive measures, whether to cover the relationship between the company and the other company, or the company and other counterparts. So if we, private organization, major corporation in the country, if we recognize this approach, if we recognize human rights, we really need to take a step forward. If we put all the puzzles together in the supply chain, we will know that everything is connected. But we need the leader in this approach. We really need the leader who will basically step up and try to materialize the approach that we're taking in terms of the human rights protection. Thank you very much, Dr. Prong from AIS. So I would like to end with Mr. Tirapong Dansari from Thai Union. So I have a few to add. Firstly, I would like to just invite and encourage all business entrepreneurs to realize that this is not something not related to you. Do not see this as cost. Do not see this as something confusing, complex, or burdensome, but it is something that will lead us to a more sustainable business approach. There is no company that take on this initiative and basically do not survive in their business. Because if you want to take on this initiative, you really need to do research, you really need to follow ESG framework, and every company that follow this approach, they have more credibility, they have a stronger standpoint in their business, they have more credibility towards their customers as well, and they have a better stance in the financial investment market. Create the ability of the company to really stay in the game. So in terms of the starting point, we have to start with the risk assessment process. You do not need to cover everything overnight. It will take time, but we need first the plan, and you need to constantly stay with the plan. It may take years, and that's okay. Just pick a starting point. So this is the message I would like to leave. So that was Mr. Tirapong from Thai Union Group. So I really like the statement of Mr. Tirapong a moment ago. So you just do not look at only the things that you lost, but you have to really look at the opportunities that you are also gaining from taking this initiative as well. And that was something, the key message I would like to just stick to give to all of you from throughout the session that we have listened to the CEOs. So if you have any questions, please do send them through the Q&A boxes. So in the meantime, while we wait for the questions, please, I would like to take the group photo. Please look straight at the camera. You can smile. So 1, 2, 3, capture. One more shot, please. Okay, so thank you very much. And we have a few questions coming in. It may not, the question did not indicate the CEOs or the speakers that they would like to have answer. But anyway, so the question is that for the listed company who has medium size or small listed companies that do not have yet the strategies on human rights. So basically they are very new in this waters. So what do they need to do to start? So the floor is yours. Anyone who would like to volunteer? So I would like to start. So Mr. Tirapong, the floor is yours. So as I've mentioned, that we have to really understand the context of our business. We have to do risk assessment. We need to plan. We need to plan comprehensively to ensure that we're covering all aspects, and we can learn from experiences of other companies. We can learn from the information already distributed or available publicly, and I think that you can reach out to your neighbor, you can reach out to your fellow companies as well, because this is something that we try to encourage everybody to really understand. So Dr. Prong, the floor is yours. So my answer is basically similar to Mr. Tirapong, because if you're small or medium businesses, small medium companies, you can start small. You can really try to reach out, try to get your hands on the materials available, guidelines, practices. If you study the step by step from the practice that are available in the world right now, and publicly right now, I think you can start, gradually, step by step. You do not need to finish everything overnight. Just set a goal, an annual goal, basically, that this year you will do this, next year you will do that. That will lead to a sustainable approach of your initiative. So, Dr. Netiton, is there anything you would like to add?
So I think aside from the context of your business, maybe you want to consider other impacts. So risk is one thing, but I think it's worth considering your business and the impact it has, not just within your company, but I think you have to consider that the whole value chain and prioritize, maybe 5 of them. Then from there, you can actually try to formulate a policy structure on what you want to do to close those gaps, or what you can do proactively to prevent human rights violation. So first, assess the impact first as in your business, and then prioritize 5 of them, and then formulate maybe a draft policy. There is a template that we use, and I'm really willing to share our experience and the template that may be useful for everyone. So thank you, all of you, for answering our questions. I have one more question here. So I'd like to hear your sentiment on your implementation of human rights and how that will benefit the investors. So on my part, I do believe that investors, they want to see companies that they invest in to conduct business ethically, whether it's and with respect to environment or ethical recruitment, and with care for human rights. I think it's it's a matter of implementing this, and all investors globally prioritize this. Companies then that don't, that don't implement like ESG principles now will actually have barriers, because investors, they have clear criteria on not investing on companies. So there's a lot of interest from foreign or investment and funds. So anyone else to add from Dr. Prong or Dr. Netiton? So I'll just be brief. If we were to think as investors, I would want to invest in business that is sustainable, right? So realizing that the business will continue to grow sustainably. So sustainable investment, companies that care on this with good governance, sustainable development principle, you won't fail, and it's really going to attract, long-term investment. So, but I'm not a financial advisor. That's a disclaimer. So Dr. Netiton, anything? So what's important is about transparency. I think, investors can clearly see, what the company is doing for human rights. So when there's more disclosure, there'll be a comparison. So I think it's a healthy competition here, competing to be more ethical. Particularly, I commend the 56-11 report from the SET. It's really great incentive for all the companies to work really hard to build that systematic human rights assessment. So big companies, large corporations, this is how we are considering we benchmark, this care for human rights. Because, to evaluation in social aspect, it's questionable how we can consider this quantitatively. So if we were to able to decode this on how we compare this disclosure and report will benefit the company itself and investors as well. This is a very short question. For companies that shareholders do not recognize this, how do we communicate this to them? I think most companies that are especially listed companies, they produce sustainability report annually. So you can actually seek and find information on their policies and commitment by the companies. And also from this report, you can read the progress from their websites. Anything else from the two speakers? Kun Prong, please. Dr. Prong. So listed companies, large or small, there is you have that target that you want to achieve, right? So if you want to work with the capital market and putting that on the table, because ultimately, being in the market, shareholders would want the company to grow. So disclosure is actually, competing to be ethical. So it's really going to move the ecosystem forward or improve the ecosystem. So and I think, getting that good ecosystem, I think it's very positive for everyone. Additionally, I think it's important to communicate to shareholders on what's the global trend and the stakeholders, and for the company to be competitive. It's not just financial performance, but non-financial performance or ESG as well. Secondly, it's like buying insurance. investing to prevent that risk that may occur in the future. So the risk, it's like, squeezing that toothpaste from that tube. So no, it's different. If it once it's out, it's out. You really can't come back. So investing in human rights, constructively, it's actually going to generate that return on investment.
So thank you very much. Thank you all three speakers, and thank you for the questions from the audience as well. And I would like to thank again the three speakers and CEOs who have joined us today to provide with us their perspectives on human rights. So I would like to thank Mr. Thirapong Chansiri, President and CEO of Thai Union Group, Dr. Nancy Thon Paditsan from Jaran Pokapan Group Company Limited, and Dr. Prong Tharawanit from AAS Advanced Info Service Public Company Limited. Thank you very much.